so I'm going to keep my hat on. Thanks, Jesse.
Folks at home want to explain the hat?
Yeah.
Oh, the hat. Okay, so it's in the roadmap meeting beforehand, and this is supposed to represent the code, the cone, not code, cone of certainty. And if you're a product owner, if you ever work in product management, this is your life. You have to be a partner to be okay with change, because change is what we live with all the time. Hey, Christy. All right, so this is a product owner asking anything, Khalilah Gambrell, product owner on Folio. Occasionally, I lead a few things, the POs. And this session, I think this is the second time of this session, it was held in Chicago. And it's an opportunity for you all to ask you questions you have. Sorry, let's see, Dorian, look at me at this phone. To ask us anything. There's quite a few POs here, and we'll probably ask the POs to stand up and introduce themselves. But just ask questions. This is my partner in crime today, though if he'll introduce himself in a minute. I have asked him to be Bill Donahue, but does everyone know who Bill was? Rest in peace. Who doesn't know who Bill? Oh, okay, good, makes sense,
Right.
Yeah. So Bill Donahue was a talk show host in the 70s, 80s, and 90s in the US. Before Oprah, there was Phil.
Yeah.
So,
And he was known for running into the audience with a microphone, which I don't have, but
Yeah.
Anyway.
So we'll wing it. So we'll have Doug introduce themselves, maybe have other POs stand up and introduce themselves, and then folks can just ask questions.
Sure. I'm Doug Loynes. I'm the product owner for the Link Data Initiative in Folio. I'm responsible for the new app that's going to be coming in Sunflower to support Link Data cataloging workflows. So we're excited about that. There's a session tomorrow, in fact. I'll be there talking about catalogers always right. So hope we can make it for that. Who else is here? I see Christine.
I'm Christine Schultz-Richard. I'm also the product owner. I work at Khalilah on the team that focuses on mark cataloging and inventory, market authority, search and browse.
Everyone, I'm Kathleen Moore, product owner for lists and FQN, and sort of touch a lot of areas, but have a lot of crossover with Bulkhead and Magda, actually. My name is Magda Zacharska, and I'm the product owner for Bulkhead. And we will have a session on the difficulty to Bulkhead right after this one. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Reimers, product owner for acquisitions. And I'm going to kick it up to Brent, you're switching.
I'm not the most I'm the product owner for item statuses, fee finds, and patron blocks. I'll jump back in.
Hi, I'm Anne Flood. I'm one of the product owners working with certification functionality in Folio. I work with Tom on team data as well as Stephanie Buck. And thanks.
Who's next? Pass the baton, Anne.
Next.
I'm the product of acquisitions and enhanced consortium support. I'm also with EBSCO. And I'll pass it over to
I'm Owens Stephens. I'm product owner of agreements and licenses in the ERM app suite, and for the new serials management app that does computation patterns and predictive pieces, and also for a module that isn't part of the cloud release, but it's been developed, which is the open access management, managing requests to publish open access and related APC and BPC charges that come with publishing and open access venues sometimes. Who's there? Yes, Martina, cool.
Hi, I'm Martina Tuna. I'm the product owner for Number Languages. And I'm sure it's
Of course.
someone else.
Ryan? Ryan?
Oh, yeah.
Ryan?
Ryan?
Yeah, product owner for data import and aspects of inventory. Is that all that you know?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So as a format, we're just going to have people ask questions, but I would ask the product owners, because the online folks, it would be easier if you came up so we could capture you and you get better on audio for the folks who are online. So whoever's going to grab the answer, if you just come up, that'd be helpful. Make sense? Yeah. All right. So now it's up to everyone else who's not a product owner in the room. What's any burning questions that we can address for you guys? Burning, not burning, tepid questions.
Suggestion. I'm playing it the way.
All right.
Hi, I'm Phil Evans from Montfort University. I've got a question for Owen and his APC payments app that's under development. There's something that we're a part of called a switchboard, which is, well, I was trying to be a switchboard. Different publishers send messages to the research libraries to say you want to publish this, it'll cost you this much money. So there's always switchboard on one side, your app on the other. Are they going to talk to each other?
So Owen, could you just repeat it? So
Yeah, sure. So this is a question about the, I mentioned in my introduction, if you didn't hear that, I'm product owner for an app called Open Access Management. It's not part of the Folio Flower releases, but it is compatible with the current Flower releases, so Poppy, Quesnalia, etc. And the app is to record when members of your organization are publishing open access articles, that can be it, or especially if there are charges related to that, so article processing charges, book processing charges, that you can record the payment of those and integrate it with the financial management in Folio as well. And Phil asked about integration of the Open Access Management app with a particular external system called OA Switchboard, but there are actually a kind of a range of external systems and community systems in the open access area that are about either alerting institutions to the fact that their authors are publishing in open access venues, or publishers or supplier systems that are just recording like the dashboards where you would see there's a charge for a particular publication. And at the end of the process, the community is very interested in collecting together data about that. So often institutions are being asked to report out or up nationally or internationally to projects which try to look at things like what's the average cost of an open access publication, or how many open access publications are being funded from various sources. So that's a long preamble to the integrate. I should say up front, specifically, there's nothing like planned in terms of integration with a particular OA switchboard, but we know there are all of these like need for integration with various external systems. One of the challenges from my perspective as a product owner, I don't think this is unique necessarily, but I think maybe it's different depending on where the product owner's kind of permission is, that position is that all of the work that I do is funded by institutions in the Folio community. So my work on ERM is funded by the GBB Library Work Network. Work on serials is funded by GBB now, originally GBB and Duke. The work on the Open Access app was funded by the University of Leipzig through European funding. And when that funding is not there, there is no development that can happen. So I can gather requirements during that phase to some extent, except that my time, is limited because there's no one paying for my time on those applications. So time tends to be taken up with basic support and making sure that if there is a bug, it's fixed rather than any new development. And so the position with the open access app at the moment is that we would love to do more development on it, but there needs to be funding in place to pay for my time, for the time of team to work on that development. And I know, for instance, Leipzig are looking for another round of funding to do that. But of course, the people who fund it tend to be the people who then help prioritise what happens next. So this is kind of a roundabout way of saying, if you really want to have first prioritisation on developments like interaction with a particular service, then essentially the way to do it is to find money to fund that, either, you know, within a community. Like in the UK, that might be something that is particularly of interest in the UK. I know that there aren't many polio sites in the UK yet, so it's kind of like, yeah, that's the bottom line. And I would love to be doing integration with OA Switchboard and a whole host of other things for OA, but at the moment I can gather that as a requirement, but I can realistically say nothing will happen until there's some money on the table.
Follow-up question that makes sense? I mean, it maybe not the answer you're looking for, but
Yeah, I heard about it. But it might be that national bodies like in the UK, this isn't called GISC,
Yeah.
maybe talking to them, so this is what we would like, would you like to give money to Owen and his team? There's a whole, we've been talking a lot about connections, not technical connections, but this is now human connections and social level to get funding in place for this.
Yeah, I should say, I mean, I don't want to be too much of a down on it. As you say, like, you may not have, I mean, every institution that uses Folio, like most institutions are not in a position to say, they fund the module like off their own back. I think that's normal. There are some, you know, QED is a network of 200 libraries or plus, or around that number. So they're in a different situation to any individual library in that network. But that is how I think funding can happen, is by making those networks. So obviously, like, that could be a national network or a regional network, or it could just be libraries getting together and saying, like, you know, because for you in the UK, like, actually, you're isolated in that sense as a Folio user at the moment, but actually there are Leipzig and there are libraries in Lower Saxony who are in Bavaria who are implementing OA as well, and you know, I think there is definitely interest from other areas. So part of the question then is like, how can we use? I mean, it was mentioned this morning in the plenary about. Like, that networking is really valuable in the polio community, but I think what we haven't done is really work out ways of formalizing things like, yeah, there are 50 institutions in the world who are interested in using it, and actually if they all put in a relatively small amount of money across 50 institutions, then you could have something. But but any of them as individuals could never afford to fund enough development. So it's like, can we find ways as a community of making that happen?
we're monitoring the chat for any questions online. I'll drop over here. Any other questions for our POs? Nothing. Everything's crystal clear. Robert,
Still formulating it, but do any product?
actually, I'm sorry, Robert. Could you come up here? It'll be a little easier for the,
Sure.
that'd be great.
Do any of you product owners envision a time when the marketplace of apps might become real? In other words, another circulation app or something like that. This was talked about years ago. We are integrating a new app with our library into Folio. It is specific for us. It's security incident reporting. So when we have problems in the library, we're also going to build an app for new materials requests that will be integrated into Folio. I'm just wondering, I heard this at perhaps a PLA, that this was going to be a marketplace and we would have choices. We don't have one circulation act, one acquisition. So anyone want to answer that?
I don't think POs are the right group to answer that question, Robert. Oh, Magda, were you gonna say something?
Yes, I voted, I think, in the same line
Yeah.
you are starting to. I think. So I think this is not the product problem, it's a technology solution. So if you are building another app with another circulation app, another bulk-edit app, if anyone wants, that was the main idea to go with micro services architecture in Folio. So this what Folio needs to support. The problem is the implementation, always it's implementation, and it's the technical aspect of it. There is no limit on the product side. This is how you build your app and how you are going to implement and how you are trying to integrate with the existing infrastructure. Does it answer the question?
Yeah.
Thank you. May I say something? So I think I'd say two things. I think it's not going to be very usual to develop two apps to do the same thing because the cost, like why? You'd have to really have a really compelling reason that the circulation app or the orders app or whatever it is that is there is just never, not even close to doing the thing that you need it to do, because it's definitely going to generally be cheaper to use the existing app than just start over. And I think that when we talk about, and so I think if there's a marketplace there, it's going to be really limited. I'm trying to imagine it. It's like, who's going to be motivated to build a new circulation app? I mean, it's like, and who's going to put the money forward for that? It's like, I just don't see it. I think there might be some areas where it's maybe more likely. So in the area that I work in, I can see that somebody might say, well, look, the way you've done ERM just isn't how we want to manage it, and we'll do it differently, because maybe the workflows in libraries are more varied than they are for circulation or cataloging in those areas. There's a variance, but actually even there, I think what we see is people either use the Folio app or they work outside Folio. And they, I think for the kinds of app that you then mentioned though, like developing new functionality that maybe isn't relevant to everybody, but is relevant to some, I absolutely think that's going to happen more because, we can see it already happening. And that's the situation with the open access app. And it's the situation with the apps that you're talking about. And I think we will see some of that. How big that gets, I think, is a question, but I absolutely think that will happen because, and what the architecture enables is having that kind of, so not a marketplace of competing applications, but a marketplace of applications that libraries may or may not choose to use. I think it's definitely better.
There's one comment here, Robert, from Mike Pomeno. Sorry, Mike. Having too many choices can be overwhelming and potentially give an opening for security issues to creep in. So might be a sweet spot. And I would just add that, and Robert, you were there, we had a discussion at the pre-conference about linked data. There are options out there. The linked data editor that I'm working on is coming out with Sunflower. There's JCricket, there's Sinopia. That's also maybe a category that potentially, could sustain, and that would be a welcome thing to get lots of people using it. So then, to move on to the next thing. So I think it's yes and no, like anything, right? Like this. All right. Any questions? No questions online yet? Any other questions? This opportunity to talk to anyone. about anything at any time.
With that one. Hey, look.
Question. Oh, we can see it here. There was talk at different times in different SIGs, especially MM, about UI changes to make it easy to read, less scrolling, less clicking. Where have those ideas gone? Who wants to tech that?
So Cara, I mean, at least with Ramson's, we have added some more shortcut keys. So that's some ways that we're trying to improve the scannability, the making, at least in the case of inventory app, more navigable. So we've added more shortcut keys there. We're trying to pay more attention to focus. So as you take actions in the UI, where should focus land or be maintained? So we're doing things in that area. Kimi, who's also on the line, she's the UX designer for Folio, and anyone's worked with her knows she's awesome. I think we all, well, good number of you have and know how great she is. She actually has worked on designs for making Folio better handle the long lists that we have. And there's different ideas that she has definitely proposed and provided for us. It's just a matter of getting the capacity and time to make those happen. Some things have been something that Dennis and Joe with the receiving app you have in your accordion. One of your accordions is the ability to search within a large list. So ability to add that as a component, a stripes component, so that we all can use it is something we all need. It's something that we have plans to work on, as well as the ability from that screen, from that same MCL. It's a multi-column list. That's what the component is called. The ability to click on an action that expands it and puts it in a different pane or a new tab. So these are all things that we all need, that we can work on as a stripes component and make it shareable. It's just that we just need to get the time to do that. So I don't know if that helps Cara. Might not. But yeah, we're trying to be more mindful of it, of focus and clicking. Oh,
Do I see any other POs?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to, well, I will be that person who just wants to say something about things. I think what I'd say about this is that the challenge with the UI is that what we want, I think what we hear is needed from users of the system is consistency. They want the apps to be work in a consistent way all the time. They want to never be surprised by the UI as it stands. And of course, that means that making a change to it isn't something you can do by, like, as an individual PO saying, actually, you know, my group, ERM, have said they hate the layout of the screen and they really prefer it to work in this particular way, and just go ahead and do it. Because what I do then is just break that consistency, and suddenly, like, the ERM apps work in a completely different way to all the other apps. And so as individual POs, I think have to be really careful that where we do make, like, special choices, and that does happen, you decide there's something really specific here, and to get the UI right, we're going to have to make it work in a particular way, that you're doing that really kind of responsibly and thoughtfully, and not deciding, yeah, we'll just redesign all this because, like, we know there's too much clicking, there's too much scrolling on this thing. And so that makes, I think, moving the whole product forward a really challenging process, because we all have to agree, we all have to schedule the work for it to happen, we all have to be together, and we all have to work to deliver on time. And I just think that's an incredibly difficult task. So it's not, I think, Cara, that those ideas have gone away, because, you know, I think, I don't want to speak for other POs, but honestly, there are parts of the interface that when I use them, I kind of dial it inside and think, you know, I mean, I understand if you're doing this 10 times a day, you absolutely hate what I've delivered here. But it's so difficult to take a product that is, you know, the flip side of that flexibility we just talked about, the fact that you can decide to deliver new apps into user space and have that independence. Like, if we want to give the users a cohesive experience of the overall application, we have to work together, and that is really challenging. Not working together, that's a pleasure, but actually making all of that work happen at the same time, and all of us agreeing, yes, this will be a good step forward, is a real challenge.
Have you thought, when you add new functionality to paints, have you thought about making those new functionalities optional in some sort of way via the configuration? For instance, the user pane has a lot of drop-down lists that we at Toners don't use. But it would be nice to just check them off so that we only see that what's important for us.
I mean, I can only say that we do that in some apps, and I can't speak for everybody, but in agreements and licenses, there's agreed to which that's possible, but it's not a complete, like, there's no complete solution that says you can switch off every single, let's say, accordion or property. And I think I would say that we picked in agreements and licenses the bits you can and can't enable, but we try to be very conservative about what we show. So if you haven't filled in any data, we tend not to show the accordions that would contain that data until you put it in, which I think is a particular decision that we've made. My concern about making it very configurable is I already know, certainly for DRM, that just the amount of configuration and decision making that's there to implement DRM is off-putting to people, and I worry about introducing, like, it would definitely be possible to introduce like a configuration which was like suppress or show, definitely at the accordion level. But I worry about that just becoming such a monster of configuration that it's even more off-putting than I know some people have told me the amount of configuration that's already required is off-putting. So yes, I think my answer is yes, I think that's a good idea. I think we do it in some cases, but I think as an overarching solution, it has some drawbacks as well.
I don't even know if I can actually add anything on that. Because we kind of have that very specific problem with orders as well. And exact same thoughts that Owen had about the concerns about configuration, especially because with orders, as an example, there are different types of orders. So it was more than just our institution uses it this way. It was for this type of use of that thing, we want to see certain fields versus not. And we, in acquisitions, ended up incorporating like visibility as templates, the order templates. So it's not a configuration, but also requires some thought when you're building your order template to say, hide these particular fields. It was just like one of the ways around it. But yeah, there are just so many complexities that I think POs are always trying to think of those things. And we're just being, you're torn in a lot of different directions. Try to keep it simple, but make it customizable, but it's, it was about,
Was there something you were thinking in particular, though, that if, notwithstanding the POs, raising their hands, I mean, you could just love to be able to do?
Just hiding some accordions that we don't use at all.
Right.
Would be nice. And I don't mean that we should implement that in the current apps, but going forward, that you have that sort in your
right
in the back.
So things that you clearly say we're never going to use.
Yeah.
Don't show it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it has come up before. There is. Yeah, it has come up before. There is open tickets on customization, real and time, Oddly enough, there was a progress in, and this was more about localization, where we discussed it again, and one of the other issues is where to store those components apps. Is it something that's sort of a configuration file that's loaded when the tool is loaded and set for the entire university, or is it something that's sort of at a user level? So it's sort of user level, you now have to create an app to store all those settings that then feed all the other apps that respond to those settings. So it's kind of like the app store is like, it's not a small solution, but.
Christy?
I was actually just going to follow on that and, just thinking about, I'm thinking specifically about inventory and the usability of the records and not necessarily the form when you're editing the records, but you could have just 3 pieces of information, but there's so many potential pieces of information that can be on a record that it is just really hard to glance at a record and understand what information is available about this resource and what this resource is. And I don't know what the solution is, but, maybe there is another, approach. And again, I don't know what that approach is, but this is it is a real problem. Being able to look at a record and know something about the resource that is being described is a real challenge.
Was there any specific tickets exist that are stuck in the backlog around that?
No, I mean, I know that this has come up before in the metadata management SIG, just the sheer length of the instance record is intimidating, especially when there's very little information that's actually provided and you have to go searching for it. And you're not even, it's actually hard to have confidence that you have found all of the relevant information because there's so much, it is just a real challenge to be able to at a glance understand what information is actually available about an instance record.
Saw a hand back there. Can someone raise his hand?
It wasn't me, but.
You want to weigh in?
No, unless I wanted to ask a different question.
Oh, go ahead.
Hi everyone, Simeon. So one of the things that we've all been sort of aware of with Folio is that the new releases are not as reliably operative as we might always hope, and we have a succession of service patches. I know there's a lot of work at the moment thinking about testing and how to do that, and I guess I have a couple of questions. So one is for POs, what do you think are the current things that are really working on improving that, and where are the challenges? And then another part is, how much of the problem is the coordination across all different apps or things internal to a given app?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, you want to take a look? We got Joe Reimers coming up.
I'll take a crack at this, and this is where I'm going to go kind of round our community, because testing is everybody's business. So we, as product owners at the beginning of the process, we gather the requirements. We take feedback. What do you want this to do? What is the desired outcome? And we try to turn that into technical stories that the developers can understand, and we put that together. Then, and one thing we've begun within the last couple of releases getting more aggressive about, and if you pay attention on Slack, you're going to see it over and over again, it's the UATs, user acceptance testing. We do that during the course of development when we have time to correct course. So we're going out to the community and saying, hey, is this doing what you expect? Is there a problem here? This is relatively new, so if you participated in the UAT, thank you. If you have not, please consider it in the future, because that's what we're trying to do to capture these errors before they become real serious bugs. And we realize we can't necessarily always capture all of your data the way you do it, but we're trying to really trim that down and just getting that out there so that you can look at it, ask questions, make sure we've thought through everything, because we can't think through everything the way you do because we're not working in libraries, we're working in some of us work in libraries, I should say that. But a lot of us are, all we're doing is focusing on building this. So we have the user acceptance test. So we take that feedback and we work on correcting really critical issues or serious quality of life issues so that when the release comes out, it's already been resolved. Then the next stage is Bugfest. Again, and the Bugfest is important because that deals with what we call integration and regression. So that's all of the pieces.
If this is the last thing that you want to listen to, we can do it. Oh, look. Oh, my God. Then go on the big screen. I don't quite understand what's going on.
There you go.
So then Bugfest is the community's opportunity to look at the whole thing together. And it's really the more the merrier. And again, we have all of the test rail test cases, but it's also an opportunity to go in and test your own workflows as best you can to make sure they're still working, especially in the sense of this worked in the last release, does it work in this release? And one thing I like to say is many hands make light work. And that's why Bugfest is so important for the broad community. That again, lots of people get in there, we get lots of eyes on. The more eyes on, the more likely it is that if there is a problem, it's going to get caught. So we do internal testing, then we turn it to the community for the user acceptance testing. The community brings it back to us, we fix it, we do this again, and then we go on to Bugfest, fix that again, and then we release. So, and really the key is test, but it's both internal and community testing. So please, in order to resolve the service patch number 14, the more testing we can do before the flower release even comes out, the better. So really it's kind of my plea is please take advantage of UATs, please take advantage of Bugfest and help us make a more reliable product because more eyes means fewer issues.
I have something to say to all.
Okay, all right, so, CSPs are painful for everyone, it's expensive for all of us, CSPs. At least with the Reimers release, as Joe mentioned, we are being a lot better about the UATs and getting the functionality in front of you sooner, so we can get that feedback sooner, move it into our backlogs and fix issues quickly. But I'm also being more mindful in nagging on that. Well, I'm looking at, but look at other stuff. But I'm also like kind of pestering POs to say, hey, Bugfest starts in November. We only have 3 more sprints of new development, so look at your backlogs and let's start like figuring out if, what things may have to move into Sunflower. Let's use dev reads to really meet dev reads so we give ourselves enough time to address issues, bugs beforehand. And Bugfest is seen less as trying to find all these critical bugs, but to say, everything works as expected. So if we can just stick to using the dev freeze dates as which we're done with new development and we're working towards stabilizing our functionality that we are releasing, that's going to go a long way, I think. So that's some of the things that I'm asking POs to do, is just be more mindful of your backlogs and not say, oh yeah, first week of Bugfest, we're still releasing new code. That doesn't work, that's bad. But using the time after dev freeze to actually continue to test and stabilize those modules so that we can identify those issues much sooner and not after we say, we've released Ramsons and oops, now there's a P2 or P1 issue. So, well, go ahead.
Okay, so Yeah, so I've got, I mean, I definitely support what Joe and Khalilah have said. I would say there are 3 sessions. We're missing a session right now on testing, and that's about something that is part of the process but wasn't called out specifically, which is automated testing. And we have more and more automated tests that run through. So there are various kinds of automated tests, but the ones that have been worked on and focused on a lot over the last I don't know, period of some time, but and the session is on now, is the end-to-end testing via the UI. So you have automated processes that go through user type behavior in the UI to check that the UI works and delivers as you'd expect. And I think those are really valuable because it can be easy to write a test that tests very specific, like if you send something to the API, does it update something in the database type tests? But of course, and that's needed and great, but of course the user experience isn't like I take one field and adjust it and then send a API request. It's like I do a load of stuff in the UI and I expect the outcome to be X. And so that automated testing, I think the more we do of that, the more we have of that, and it's a real investment because writing those tests, designing those tests take time. But it is really valuable. There are 2 sessions tomorrow afternoon about institutional aspects, like how you can do better testing as you upgrade between Folio versions and apply service patches, and also about how can us generally as a community boost our testing quality. And I think, like, if you're interested in that, I would definitely recommend you go along and contribute to those sessions. But I mean, of course, like, I don't know if it goes without saying, but I hope it goes without saying that as POs, we really don't want to release software that's broken, and it generally creates more work when we do. Like the amount of time we spend then chasing down bugs and trying to understand it and writing up stories, etc., is a real disincentive to rush stuff out. But we do have competing priorities, and as Khalilah says, like Khalilah is saying, like, look, instead of please stop. And you'll regret it if you don't stop. And then on the other hand, users are saying, we really, really, really need this to work by the Westnalia release. And I say users, that can be a broad set, that can be individual institutions, it can be organizations that are funding development, it can be, all kinds. But that pressure is real as well to get things done. And I know from like the last releases of agreements and licenses went very poorly. And that was because we were trying to meet a requirement that came from the technical council that was driven by security concerns to upgrade some parts of the framework used in our software development. And trying to get that done and missing deadlines and then trying to get it done before release, before Bugfest, before, was really painful and resulted in a lot of things not working during Bugfest and having to work on that. Finally, and then I'll stop. It is so difficult to test across real production environments, and we see this every time. You test and everything works, and then it's implemented on a production environment, and something is found, and that can be like you just didn't anticipate there would be that much data, or and Folio like deployments are complex. Like and the bugs can be deep. So we've had bugs that are caused by the fact that we've got providers running, say, 60 tenants in a single instance of one agreement, and that's never happened before. And that happens to break something because 59 was fine, but 60 is not. Or they've run it with not enough memory or not enough virtual CPU. And like these things are so like we cannot possibly test for all of those variables. And so I don't know what the solution is, like from a team perspective. Like the developers can run up, local environments, they can run up environments that try and mimic that. And we've got some ongoing conversations about how we can improve the amount of like the data we have in the test systems as well, because that's a big part of it, realistic data at a realistic scale. But of course, like realistic scale for one library is not realistic scale for another, right? And it's so difficult to take into account all of those variables. And I would say, like, your question was like, is it within an app or between apps? I would say actually it's like late releases and environmental issues are the two things that I have been caught out by most. And like late releases, that can be me being late with my own functionality or another team being late with functionality that I care about. So obviously if there's a change to an app that I'm integrated with late on, that can have an impact and that can happen. But obviously if you're late with your own, development, if you the testing doesn't happen on time, that's it.
Another question that in the afternoon.
Hi.
Yeah, hi. So I think I already asked last year, how can we, as a community, as students and families, help new POs more? So if you have any questions, not that I'm the person that can, but maybe the forum to put them on.
Well, it sounds like she was addressing you.
Yeah,
Well, for the project I'm working on, with the link data, it's a little different from the rest because it's a brand new thing, and so we're in pilot. So we're getting some very, very good feedback from our pilot libraries, and we're doing UATs, and we're doing iterative development. We're throwing stuff in front of them to get feedback on, and it's worked very successfully for us. But when we get the part of the rest of the game, we're going to run into the same kind of challenges everyone else has. So maybe someone a little more established. How about you, Ryan? You want to talk to us?
Yes, that's a little bit. The thought of what can the community do to help us more. Really, I think a lot of it is like building off of what everyone is just speaking about around testing. Jumping into the UAT when an announcement goes out in Slack is phenomenal help. Like that's huge. Attending SIGs and discussing with the community and like you hear anything that's going on in your wheelhouse is really great. And I work with data import, which everyone uses differently. It's really customizable. And that can make it really hard to do cookie cutter testing. It's like no one's going to do it the same. And so having the SNEs jump in and do the UAT or bring something up in the Slack channel or at the data import subgroup for me is like really incredibly important. And that kind of feedback is really what we can build useful features around. So that's my 2 cents on might be helpful. Dennis?
I'm gonna just tie it back to I think partly tied back to the question before, because I 100% agree with everything else that said. Testing is really important. Probably the biggest part of what you could do for POs is that. But also one thing that wasn't touched on that Simeon asked about was how do we make sure we're not creating gaps when we're developing new functionality? And I think, there are a number of things that we are trying to do more, trying to like socialize the features that we're all working on, because we do have a bit of a structural barrier in place for that. In the SIGs are focused on a certain area, the POs are focused on a certain area, and that works, but also can have this aftermath or this externality of you open yourself up to gaps. So being aware of the functionality that's being developed in other areas as members of the community, not that we're going to rely on you for that, because there are things that POs can do, but if users are also paying attention to things happening in other areas as much as you can and talking about it in meetings, I think maybe as a community, there could be a piece that we're missing there, a better way to socialize what's coming. If we're all ready for the scope deadline, then we could maybe be socializing better what all the individual POs are going to be working on and find those gaps sooner. So.
Yeah.
Hi, I was just going to add, please also take advantage of the community documentation product that we have. It's JIRA. And if you're not familiar with JIRA, there are resources available, including WOLFcon presentations last year on creating bugs and how to search for work within JIRA in the Folio community. We rely as POs on JIRA as our source of truth, really. And so if you do find that there is an issue, please feel free to look at JIRA, see if it's already been documented. If it hasn't, please unabashedly create a new ticket. The more information provided about the issue that is being seen, what environments it's being seen in, adding screenshots is helpful too. Also, if there are tickets that you know of that you're interested in additional functionality and you don't see that already documented in the JIRA work, please feel free to reach out to either the reporter or the assignee of the JIRA tickets to talk to them more about what you would like. And if that's feasible, then we will try to add it in. If it's not feasible, then newer tickets for future releases can be created.
I'll throw in a plug for the support SIG. August, going to be talking about it later on. But if you can have people sit on the support SIG, that actually really helps too, because then people who are actually using Folio can add directly to the login saying, this is how it's affecting my institution. This is the importance for my institution for this to be fixed, and that actually helps the POs to help prioritize things.
We are almost at the top of the commercial, so it's really good. But any other questions? Or cheers? Well done. Yeah. All right, I think that's great.
Thank you.
Good AMA. So I think there are snacks or something at 3 to 3:30. So have at it, and thanks for coming today.